Hi book lovers, welcome back to my channel. So recently, hockey romances have been blowing up once again, and I had to jump back on that bandwagon because it's honestly been a hot minute since the last time I read a hockey romance. But it's the new trend, the new big thing once again, and I decided to read a couple popular ones, a couple hyped hockey romances for a week. I was able to read 3 of them in that week. They are pretty big books, both literally and figuratively. One book was actually 750 pages long. Another one was almost 500 pages, and the last one was a more reasonable number of pages. So reading these books kind of killed me pages wise, but I had a lot of fun because I do love hockey romances. But yes, I read 3 popular books by 3 new to me authors. I wanted to read more, but I just did not have the time. But these are all authors who have been popping up everywhere on social media. Like, I couldn't not see them or hear about them. So first up, the first hockey romance that I read was Mile High by Liz Tomford. I have been very curious about this book and this author because it seems like everyone is raving about her and loving her. So when my library got the audiobook for Mile High, which is the first book in the Windy City series, I jumped on that so fast. I do want to say first off, when I saw this book and I saw the book cover for the first time, I didn't realize it was a hockey romance. The cover was giving a pilot romance. It's probably the least hockey related cover that I have ever seen. Not that it's a bad thing, but you know, expectations. So in this book we have a hockey player hero and a flight attendant heroine. Xander's the hero. He plays hockey in Chicago and he is known as a player on and off the ice. He gets into fights all the time on the ice. He leaves with a different woman after every game, etc. So reading him at the beginning of this book, I wasn't too impressed by his character, but I was like, okay, we'll see how this goes. The main characters meet because the hero's team, his hockey team, has their own exclusive private plane and their own personal crew. And one of the flight attendants is the heroine Stevie, who Xander's is immediately attracted to. But because she couldn't care less about him or who he is, he decides to make her life hell on these flights. Xander's is rude and annoying, and I didn't really like his character that much. The beginning of the book was a little rough for me because of this. I mean, yes, there is banter between Z and Stevie, but the vibes were off because she is literally employed by his team and she can't ever refuse him when he asks her to do some dumb thing. Otherwise, she'll get fired. It's when they're not on these flights to some hockey games that things did get better for me. When Stevie isn't forced to serve Xander's, that's when things started to feel a little bit more real and genuine between them. They do get hot and heavy pretty quickly. They start off as a hookup, and this is the first time that Xander's actually wants more from a woman. I did love the fact that he was the one who wanted more, and Stevie was like, no. I love to see a player get knocked off his feet by a woman. She's strong and independent, but she does have flaws that make her real and relatable. Once the romance got rolling in this book, I enjoyed it so much more. Stevie and Xander's are super hot together. He falls hard and fast for her. And there's also an element of forbiddenness to their relationship because there's this no fraternization rule, and if, you know, they get caught, Stevie will get fired. So the romance overall, minus the beginning, I thought it was great. There were parts that felt a little too long and repetitive. This one was the one that was almost 500 pages long. Probably my one main complaint about this one was that I didn't understand the issue with Xander's role in hockey because it felt like such a non-issue. He was so torn up and angsty over this one thing that wasn't even a big deal. But overall, I had a lot of fun with this one. For my first Liz Tomford read, I thought it was good. I give it 4 stars. It was a solid debut, and I can see why people are raving about this author. I'm definitely looking forward to reading the sequel, which I think people love even more than this first book. It's about Stevie's brother who plays basketball, so it's another sports romance. And then my second hockey romance read was Pucking Around by Emily Rath. This one has been a long time recommendation from my friend Samantha from Books with Samantha. She's been telling me to read this book for ages, but I held off because it's 750 pages long. When I saw the page length for the first time, I was like, why? And after having read this, I'm still like, why? That being said though, I did adore this book. It was my first Emily Rath book, and honestly, it could have been 5 stars for me if it was cut down a little bit more and we got more development with the heroine. But my rating for this one, 4 stars. So this is a why choose reverse harem hockey romance about a physical therapist who gets hired onto this new NHL team in Florida. She ends up falling for a coworker and 2 of her players. The great thing about Poking Around is that I was instantly hooked right from the beginning. There is a prequel, but I decided not to read it just because I didn't have time and didn't want to read more pages than I needed to. But even without having read this novella, which isn't really necessary, I was easily able to get sucked right into the story. If you're curious about the prequel though, it's a novella set 2 months before the beginning of Poking Around. It's about Rachel hooking up with one of her heroes, but leaving before they can exchange names or numbers. And then at the beginning of Poking Around, on her first day as a new physical therapist, Rachel comes across the guy that she had this one amazing night with, but he is completely off limits to her because Jake is one of her hockey players. So Jake is hero number 1. Hero number 2 is named Caleb. He is Rachel's new neighbor and Jake's best friend. Caleb is openly bi and he works as the team's assistant equipment manager. And then the third and final hero is Mars, who is this Finnish hockey player who is aiming for the Olympics. Jake and Rachel pretty much fall head over heels for each other right away. It is very much insta love. They're already saying I love you by like 30%, which I didn't really mind that much just because Jake is so lovable and so adorable. He's the golden retriever to Caleb's aloof cat. Caleb and Rachel, they say I love yous around 50% halfway through the book. And in addition to Jake and Rachel and Caleb and Rachel, Caleb and Jake, the best friends, have their own romance in this one. It's a best friends to lovers MM romance that was actually so sweet because of how close these two already are. So if you're wondering if there's any sword crossing in this why choose, there is. And then Mars is the one who takes the longest to be fully a part of this group just because he's the last to join and he's also not interested at all in Caleb or Jake. He is in this for Rachel completely, and if I had to choose my favorite guy in this reverse harem, it would probably have to be Mars. He's just this big, protective Viking bear of a man. He is a little quiet. He likes to keep to himself, but he just adores Rachel and I loved him. I mean, I loved all the guys, but Mars especially. So in this one, I did appreciate how each guy had a different pacing when it came to the romance with Rachel. So as you're reading it, you're always looking forward to a new relationship once one solidifies. The main thing that I wasn't a huge fan of though, that dropped this book from 5 stars to 4 stars, was how Rachel had such an interesting backstory. She's the daughter of a rock star. She was a wild child growing up. She picked herself up to become this incredible doctor, but we never really got that much about her history. We're only told little snippets of her past and her family, and I wish we got more of it because it was so interesting. Not that this book needed more pages, but if we cut down some parts, we cut down like a lot of the sex, and instead use that free space to flesh out Rachel's character, I would have absolutely loved this book. But it was still a super adorable read, very entertaining, and I'm definitely going to be reading more from this author. I know there's going to be another book in the series coming out later this year, and I'm so excited. And then the third and final hockey romance that I read over the past week was Iced Out by C.E. Ritchie. She's of course another new to me author like the other 2 authors, but this time this is an MM hockey romance. It's enemies to lovers. I actually had been hearing great things about this one, so when I was deciding on my third hockey romance book to read, I was torn between a couple, but I went with this one and I am so glad that I did. So in Iced Out, we have Oakley and Quentin, who are rival hockey players who hate each other. Quentin hates Oakley because Oakley is a hockey player legacy. His dad was this famous hockey player, his uncle was one too. So Quentin thinks that Oakley has skated through his hockey career and had everything handed to him. And then on the other hand, Oakley hates Quentin because of Quentin's terrible mood and attitude toward not just Oakley, but everyone in general. So these two grew up together as rivals, but for the past 4 years of college, they have gone to the same school, which means they play for the same team. And the funny but sad thing is that they don't actually play well because of how they don't like each other and don't work well together. So their whole team is struggling trying to win whatever hockey championship that they're aiming for. But then things change when they go to a party one night and they end up hooking up because they win their game the next day and they realize that them having sex is like this new superstition that they have to do every time before every game. The interesting thing about these two is that Oakley is openly gay, whereas Quentin has never even thought about being with another man, but once they hook up, Quentin is just all in. Quentin is so great. He literally just goes head first when it comes to sleeping with Oakley. Oakley is the one who tries to set some rules between them, but Quentin, he goes all the way, no holds barred, and they are crazy hot together. At first they stick to doing everything but anal, but then they're like, screw it, screw the rules, we gotta do butt stuff because we are so horny for each other. And the way these two went at it all the time, I was surprised that they never actually got caught by anyone important. They were really able to keep their enemies with benefits relationship on the down low. Also, if you love reading about hate sex in your books, you will love this one. Their progression of their romance though was so freaking sweet. I loved how the enemies' relationship slowly turned into something more real and genuine. When they have their oh my gosh, I can't believe I love him moment, that's so cute. The only thing that dragged about the story though was towards the middle of the book. It didn't seem like there was anything going on besides them just hooking up. Like in the beginning, we had a lot of their teammates, their friends. We got to see the games that they lost, but then once Oakley and Quinn started hooking up, we lost all of that outside story. We barely got to see a game that they won until the very end. And even though the ending is very predictable and very cheesy, I will forgive it because of how freaking cute these two are. They matched with each other so well and they balanced each other out. Like Oakley's the one who loves rules, Quentin loves to break them, but together they were perfect. So I gave this one 4 stars. So those were my thoughts on my hockey romance reads. I did consider reading 2 other hockey romances that I had been eyeing. I'll probably end up reading them eventually, but the ones that I thought about reading for this video were Consider Me by Becca Mack and Weakside by S.J. Silvis. Sadly, I just did not have time for them, but the 3 hockey romances that I did read were all so much fun. 4 stars across the board, which I mean, I'm happy with. So far, it does seem like these popular hockey romances have been living up to the hype, at least for me. If you've read any of these hockey romances, let me know your thoughts, and if you have recommendations on some new hockey romances, let me know. I only know the ones from like 5-7 years ago, so I am a little out of the loop, but I'm slowly trying to catch up, and these 3 books were great. As always, links to all the books that I mentioned will be down in the description below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!